as a national news powerhouse. As for our speakers today, we have with us Prashant Kumar, CEO of Group M, a doyen of the industry, who has grown with the organization for 15 years. Now, Group M is the world's leading media investment company, responsible for more than $60 billion in annual media spend. Thank you, Prashant, for being with us. Vikram Sakuja is the equity partner and group CEO of Madison Media and OOH, India's largest independent media agency. And in this career spanning over 30 years, he's represented several reputed brands. Mr. Sakuja has also sat on several industry body and boards committees, including ASCI, ABC, RSCI, BARC, and FICCI. Thank you, Vikram, for being with us this morning. Mr. Shashi Sinha is the elected chairman of the Broadcast Audience Research Council of BARC and CEO at IPG Media Brands India. He's also a board member of the Advertising Agencies Association of India and the chairman of the Media Research Users Council. Mr. Sinha has also been involved with various industry bodies such as the Advertising Standards Council of India and the Ad Club. Over there.
Yes, we also have Kartikeya Sharma with us today, founder of ITV Network. ITV Network, of course, has been the fastest growing network across the country with a presence across multiple languages and states across the country, from TV to digital to the print medium as well. Kartikeya Sharma is also Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha. May I invite all of our speakers, all of our panelists to please come to the stage, and our moderator as well, to kick things off for this inaugural session. Barun, the floor is yours. Over to you for this riveting conversation that I promise we'll be witnessing over the course of the next few minutes.
Good morning, everyone. The Honorable former Vice President has just very succinctly laid out the role of the fourth estate, which is the media, and his words of encouragement will keep us going further. You know how news has started? To my mind, that in India it started in 1780, the Bengal Gazette. Started with singing praise for the Sahibs. From there, you had like-minded people, high net worth individual, or backed by funds, people came out with newspapers to percolate certain vision, to drive a mission. Subhash Chandra Bose's Swaraj is one such thing, which mobilized the freedom fight. And then post-independence, 70s and 80s, it used to be primarily anti-establishment driven. In came economic liberalization in 1991, in the early 90s. From there, media has seen a different course altogether in our existence. We turned ourselves into a business outfit. So, are we really a business? These are the questions that we live every day with, all of us who are here, who own media, who run medias. That are we a business? And if you are a business, are we in content business? And if you are in content business, we are unable to create content. We don't create content. And there are several other challenges. I think most of us, especially the news industry, news organizations, we have factory size of workforce. I mean, for instance, TV9 Network has close to 4,000 people working. And most of them are journalists. And the acumen and intelligence of those journalists will match that of the politicians. So you deal with factory size of workforce. However, you deal with intellectually sound, strong people. And then came the existential dilemma. That are we the fourth estate or are we the business? So I would open the discussion with our panelists, starting with Prashant, Vikram, Shashi, and Karthik would give the other side, other perspective of the other side. That do you think that if you were wearing the hat of a news channel head, how would you have balanced this? The existential identity, that of the fourth estate. At the same time, you got to run your business, you got to look at your bottom line, you got to pay salaries, you got to give increments the next year. So starting with Prashant, how would you have balanced this?
Yeah, thanks, Varun. First of all, good morning, and many congrats to the entire NBF for, organizing a great event like this, and wish you all the very best. It's great to see all of you coming together, right? Okay. I think, Varun, this question actually is a very common question nowadays. Every organization asks, right? Because I think it's evolving. Every year, every quarter is an evolving space. And I think from a news perspective, yes, I definitely feel news will always stay, right? News is an essential aspect of not just information, but also getting updated, right? And therefore, as you said, a content that is authentic, a content that is representing what is the truth is essential for everybody to get updated. So there is a balance of content that is required there, right? When it comes to looking at running business, I think that's where we have to look at multiple and versatile aspects of how every asset that we create can be leveraged, right? I think advertising is one part of the business, right? I think content appeal and demand of content and having a monetization model is another part of the business. I think within the content, finding opportunities to help consumers in touch and connected, and therefore leverage that for brands is probably another way to look at running models. I think the assets that every one of you is creating today beyond one single medium and leveraging it to multiple other medium gives you opportunities to expand the opportunities to monetize and therefore maximize the potential of how we look at the business. All of this, and every time I keep asking the question that how are we leveraging technology enough for business, right? I think a lot of it has progressed from reporting, a lot of it has progressed on the content aspect where we've indulged and used and leveraged the tech part. Now how do we use that for running the business more and more? The answers lie there, and this will keep evolving as well, because there will be new practices, there will be new models, there will be new products, new services that each one of us will start applying as and when we start see the evolution happening. I think it is important for us to debate on that, deliberate on that, and create innovative ways of looking at and running that business. I pass it on to Vikram.
Vikram, he's given a perspective overall, but I don't think that we've touched upon that specific point. If you can elucidate us that as a fourth estate, can we also be a business outfit? Are there conflicts of interest?
Great. Okay, thanks, Parul. So it's like this. We have to still carry out our responsibilities of being the fourth estate and sort of always being a pillar of the democracy. At the same time, we have to also make sure that we pay the salaries and run a profitable business. Now, there are a couple of things that in the business that we are working in news, currently the two main ways of earning money are going to be either subscription or advertising. And
for news, it is advertising.
It's really advertising.
5 to 7%.
Absolutely. So it's all coming down to advertising. Now, the simple answer to this is going to be that if you have got to run a business, somewhere I just feel the way the Indian news, while at one level it's blooming, but at the same time it's also now mushroomed. In sense, and mushroom means that there's too much fragmentation. The reality is, whatever you might try to do, there will be a certain pot that news can earn. Now, if that is going to be distributed across 200 players, or is going to be distributed across 30 players, that's wherein the key to profitability lies. So my first point is, it's not an easy answer, but I think consolidation is going to be required in case you really want to have a thriving, profitable business. The second, and I think that's where is probably more practical for today's thing, I mean, that's the actionable point. Let's try to create more value in what we are doing and try to extract more value. Since we're talking advertising, really, the role of in media, when our clients come and spend money, they use media as a distribution pipe for ads. So basically, if you have to get your ads seen, how can we get it? And TV channels is, of course, the way we go about it. And within that, we look at news, we look at entertainment, and a whole lot of others. So purely as a distribution pipe, you just put you put a value to the impressions that you're getting and the reach that you're getting, and that's how you value it. But you also use media as a way to do associative marketing. And more importantly, a higher level order than associative marketing is sponsorship. Sponsorship is essentially like whatever, IPL, Olympics. People pay a top dollar to sponsor those. Now that is because somewhere the passions that people have with those properties is so high that if some of that passion can be appropriated by a brand, it's a huge game changer for them, and they're willing to pay the premium. I dare say that news has not really, they do a lot of associative marketing, a lot of it is branding. I don't think I think it can be made a little bit better towards brand building, but the sponsorship area is one where properties that you create, they should really be high passion properties, and if they're high passion properties, you should be able to extract a top dollar. So my first thing is consolidate, please. Otherwise, it'll get increasingly difficult, and try to get more value out of the higher order role of media, i.e. associative marketing and sponsorship.
Right. Consolidation, yes, that could be a way forward, but individually when the channel comes up, we've always seen that the purpose of launching a news channel often is not profitability. That is where the dilemma comes in. That's where the...
But I thought that was your question.
No, I know. Not for everyone, I'm saying. That for us, those who are running serious business, obviously it's a serious business. But many times if you see that 600 odd news channels which have mushroomed in the country, one of them would not have a profitability module. Now, Shashi, you wear two very important hats, chairman of IPG, chairman of BARC. From the pedestal, how do you see, do you feel happy about this dilemma that we live with? Do you have a solution for us?
Thank you for asking the question. I have a solution. I have a practical solution. So can I be heard? Yeah. Yes. So let me say first a few things. Firstly, thank you for inviting us, three of us. It's peculiar. This morning at breakfast I was thinking, we are very good friends, the three of us. Probably this is the first time we are on stage together. So thank you, NBF, probably. But therein lies a tale. You'll be surprised that the amount we collaborate with each other. We are competitors, we are bitter competitors. Between the three of us and a few others, we control 70-75%. I'm not saying it negatively, I'm saying it positively. 70-75% of the ADEX of television. I say to the leadership of NBF, and I say to everyone in the room, you'll be surprised at the amount we collaborate on the stuff we collaborate on industry issues. We are bitter competitors. When I say bitter, we fight tooth and nail. But by night, we work very closely together on industry issues like what is our compensation, what is our remuneration, how do we improve. This morning, Prashant and me were having a chat on how do we, and we move, So the message I want to give that there is huge, while Vikram spoke of consolidation, I think, and I can go on, I can go in detail of how we collaborate, I think one of the biggest things for the news broadcasters would be to collaborate. There are many ways. There's no doubt that PK is the #1 company. There was some debate on who the #2 was, but that was started out over a period of time, yeah? But in news, there's a lot of confusion. Who's #1, who's #2, who's #3, who's #4. No one's #3, #4. Everyone's #1. So I think if you start collaborating, if you start talking to each other, so you fight by day. I'm sure everyone has a right to think. But as an industry, which is what this federation is for together, how do we take each other's interest? A lot of issues will get sorted out. So when you compete, when we compete, we don't run each other down, Consequently, what happens is our clients don't ask questions, what are you guys saying? We do what we do. Yeah? But when we collaborate, I tell you, the fist is stronger. A lot of you don't understand this. Hopefully not too many clients sitting in this room, but they see the fist coming. And people fall in line. The toughest of clients, the global clients, we agreed on basis of certain guidelines put out by broadcasters that we, with your permission, I'm going to spell it out as an illustration, that we will give pricing in a particular way. Auditors had come into our business and they were pricing, they were going channel-wise. We said, no, we will do it in a particular way, whether we will do it in whatever way we did. I can assure you, global clients, the biggest of clients globally, when we have done what we have done, have fallen in line. Because that's the way the industry works. So my submission is, and we are doing something even more dramatic. We met, without going into details, we meet, the joke in the company is that my colleagues tell me, you meet PK, Vikram and Sam and Anupriya more often than you meet us. So the limited point I'm making is, the big message to your question is, you collaborate all these issues, whether it's content related, whether it's what the former vice president said, in terms of pillars of democracy, whether it's the business issues, a lot of hurdles will be sorted out. That's my appeal to all of you sitting in this room.
Right, thank you, Shashi. Karthik.
So I don't think there's any doubt that the core function of a media business is to, be the fourth estate and imbibe the qualities of a democratic setup, that is. But that doesn't take us away from the fact that you're running a business at the end of the day. You run a business profitably or not is relative, in my opinion. It depends on what you want. Do you want growth? You want profitability? How do you approach the business? But like most other businesses, in other genres and other fields, we have a systematic problem in the news industry at multiple levels. So we spoke about the only source of revenue being advertisement, which should not be the case, ideally. And if that were to change, obviously the revenue streams and income streams would also change. But the larger point over here is that, we have to look at the systematic problem that plagues the industry and why we are in the position that we are. And that is at multiple levels. The first being that, not realizing the fact that, this industry is changing and evolving a lot. And the bulk of the challenge, since we spoke about consolidation and other factors, is not coming from within. It's coming from new avenues and new areas that are becoming challengers. So, traditional broadcast businesses are now actually facing challenge from independent content creators. And I think going forward, we really need to concentrate on how we actually monetize each and every aspect, just to extend to what PK was saying. How do we monetize each and every aspect of it and create new revenue streams? We can't be traditionally based on just pure play advertising and think that is what will make us profitable per se. There's also, a whole reorientation of how we approach solutions and problems. So it's a tough business, it goes without saying. It's not an easy business because it's highly capital intensive, human resource intensive. But it's changing in multiple manifestations. I think the most important point here is also to understand that the industry is evolving. And while we have not reached a finite point, it is like any other capital economy and capital market. Until unless you don't remove the inefficiencies from the system, the businesses will not become very profitable. To inefficiencies, I'm talking about reach, I'm talking about distribution, I'm talking about other factors which tend to take away a large chunk of the monies from the businesses per se. Whereas being a content creator and being free-to-air networks, we should be able to decimate our content and it should be able to reach to the last person free of cost. Well, these are problems, systematic problems which lie in the system. And if they were actually in spirit, in letter and spirit, brought in the way they're supposed to be, I don't think the business should be unprofitable.
Right. Thank you, Karthik. My bit on it is that I think any business or any identity will have to be true to the core. I don't think that any one of us can afford to contradict our existence, which is that of a fourth estate. And business should happen around it, which is a byproduct. I mean, if you're true to your core and if you're efficient enough, I think business comes. But even then, there are challenges. Like Karthik spoke about evolution, still evolving. News industry always faces some atypical challenges, which is typical to us, which is not there in the industry. Like for instance, I think we say television media. Television media generalizing GECs and news. I think GEC and news, as far as business structure is concerned, is as diverse as between news and FMCG. GEC, you go the traditional way, you figure out what the consumer wants, you create that content and you disseminate that. But here, we don't create content. So there are challenges and the stagnation of growth. In fact, it's a degrowth. So the industry faces challenges, and the biggest challenge then again is that it's free to air. And as Karthik said, while it is free to air, to reach the consumer, we have to shell out from our pocket. So don't you think that, starting with maybe Vikram, that when we say news media and television media, we take a liberty of generalizing that. They are not one and the same, and the challenges are very typical to news industry.
Look, I'm not sure I'll agree that from an advertising standpoint, we need to have different standards for the news genre and, say, general entertainment or sports.
No, one sec, Vikram. You know, here, many of these questions, we've got this forum. This is a very unique forum where three of you are together. You are a very important stakeholder. But not every answer or every reaction needs to be from the advertiser's point of view. I mean, you can go beyond that and wear the hat of a business leader and respond to the predicaments and challenges that we face.
In that case, rephrase your question, because I think I'm hearing you say that you're finding that overall news is degrowing. Is that the question?
Look, the question is news possible. It's not a question, it's a proposition. The way I look at news and GEC, I feel that they are not one and the same. And the predicaments and the challenges are unique to news industry. And yet, like as I said, that we're free to air and we still have to shell out money for reaching the consumers.
No, absolutely. There's no question that news and GEC are not the same. Although some channels you might argue that they're more entertainment than news, but by and large, as a genre, it is much more. News is, of course, completely different. Just like sports is completely different from general entertainment, as is movies. So, yes, obviously, that's why we call them different genres, because they are fundamentally different. The reason why people come to them are different. So, from that standpoint, look, I think again, you've called me, I'm a media person, so you'll get that perspective.
Right. You always come up
the reality here is, and I think the beauty about news is that everybody likes to seek out news. So the reach, amongst all the TV viewing population, the reach for news is really, really high. The thing is that there's reach and there's time spent.
That's right.
And these two things make up viewership. So people, when during the COVID days, when people were anxious, they wanted to know more information about how to survive, I think the news genre did a human service. They did fantastic work to get the best panelists, best doctors. There was such great content that it became so sticky. All of us were spending hours on news genre just because we needed to know more. The share of news went up from 7% of all TV viewing to 20%. That's because people were hungry, and you guys filled that void with some fantastic work. But the same thing, when it gets back into normal news, reality is that people will come, take the news, spend a few minutes, and get out. That's reality. What we try to do is, oh my God, I reached 20, now why am I back down to 5 or 6, I have to go back to 20. Then you start doing things which is not true to your fourth estate, it's not true to your core. Because then you suddenly said, I've tasted blood with 20% viewership share, how do I get back? And that's when things unravel.
Right, so Prashant, and I would tend to agree with you, Vikram, that if the content is good, with that kind of reach, you should have had higher viewership, the news industry. And the precedence is there. When we dished out content which is in the interest of people during COVID, a 3 times jump that we've seen. So your bit to it, Prashant.
Yeah, see, definitely none of all this are same. GC is not same as news, so are languages, so are markets. But my humble request is, there is also a customer which is our client.
Advertiser.
Yeah. So whatever we are doing, we are trying to help the client or the advertiser to find a progress in their business. That's why they are advertising. Correct. And if you put the fundamental aspect that as part of a thinking on creating solutions, I think all answers will come from there. It is a fact that there are solutions which only has news channels as part of the solution. It is a fact. It is also a fact, unfortunately, that some markets may not be there in a solution for a particular campaign. And sometimes, maybe some of the genres like music or sports or news may not be there in some of the campaigns where an advertiser is creating a solution, which is a co-creation, right? Now, therefore, what does this mean? It means that we have to focus on the solution, which will actually bring the advertiser again feel confident that I have to be focusing on the solution, again repeat it, and see a lot more longevity to the solution that we are able to strengthen, right? So I don't think we should base it with asking a question, are we all different? We are different. Definitely we are different, right? The solution on print is different to radio. I mean, look at media, look at within genre, right? But at the same time, if we all focus to create solutions that will create success for our customers, right? Our customers are in the space advertisers, right? We are creating solutions on that. Similarly, we have consumers where we position our content, etc. We also have, I mean, we are looking at a balance, right? I think there is strong value that can come on. And as Vikram mentioned, sponsorship, he meant properties, right? If we're able to create some content which will actually help the brands to connect with consumers, I think that's a great opportunity. We're able to get tech solutions, allowing them to say that we can give you some of the tasks that you want to solve for certain markets using languages. Fantastic opportunity, right? I think this is all telling us that we have abundant opportunities to create stronger solutions to our advertisers. And that is where the answers lie on our progress. And I'm definitely confident each one of us has many more assets that can be leveraged.
That's brilliant, Prashant. I think you hit the nail on the head that we are limited only by our capability to innovate. And if you're, as long as we are solution driven and not really go and ask for advertisers their buck, but provide them solutions, I think they'll be far more keen and willing. And I think because our content is far more adjustable, unlike GEC is not fixed, we are in a position to innovate more, be more solution driven. So we'd keep that in mind. Shashi, again coming back here, obviously you also talked about consolidation. Vikram said about the number of news channels. While we are scrambling for 15% of the revenue share, but there are about 600 of us possibly. So that's the problem. But there's another radical thought which often crosses my mind, and both Karthik and you can react to that. Do you feel that advertising driven, it might be radical, it is up for discussion. Do you think an advertising driven news media is some kind of an oxymoron? Like, for instance, I'll tell you, who are our two largest segment of advertisers, the corporate world and the government, right? I mean, shall we really expose a corporate house where he should be if he is one of the largest advertisers of us? And similarly for government. I mean, is that an oxymoron? Does it self-defeat itself?
Hello? If you want a theoretical answer, I will say yes, you should keep them separate. But life is not like
theory. Life is not theory. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to have, need for survival, you need business. And I mean, it will be foolish to say, because I think the senior people, practical people sitting here, so it will be foolish to say that, you need this thing. Why can't you coexist? I mean, all over the world, whichever market, I don't know which market has free press, so I'm not as bright as all of you, but it's very difficult to figure out which market is absolutely independent press, as Venkat ji called out. But I'm sure a lot of these markets are advertising funded. Ratios may be different. India is probably more dominant, or news is probably no dominant advertiser funded. Elsewhere it is less, maybe somewhat less, but they are advertising funded, whether print or TV. There's no going away from that. I want to make a comment earlier to what Vikram and PK said, and I fully agree with what they're saying. Just want to make a comment or make an observation more than anything else. There's a campaign running from a news network, maybe a member of NBF, may not be a member of you, I'm not sure. But says our reach is more than GCs. I'm sure all of you have seen that campaign at this point in time. So I was in a dilemma. I was thinking about it, I wear multiple hats. So one hat which I will not talk about in this forum, I was wondering whether there's any violation of process, there. So it's a bit debatable, but that's a separate discussion. But I thought it was very good for the industry. I thought, if you see from our planner's point of view, and I'm saying this because today media is a volume game. People in our company, it is my company, I don't know Vikram and PK's company, the youngsters who take the decisions, we are the ones who come and give gyan in these forums. The actual decision making is being done by our youngsters, 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds who are running plans. For them, news has become a share game. So they say,
news has become?
A share game. So they say, listen, if I have to take news, news is never part of a plan in terms of building up a curve out of it. It is, but it's always okay. What is the share of each of these news channels? So if they say, normally they take 4 or 5 news channels in a particular genre, Hindi news or whatever, and they'll say, okay, what is the share? Am I right? Because that's how it works, that these are the 4 or 5 channels we'll take. No one has looked at news as reach. So I thought, keeping, like I said, that Bach thing hat aside, I thought it was a very interesting way of waking up our teams and the client teams saying, listen, news can be a reach builder. And if it is a news reach builder, how can we, so whether I like the idea of them comparing with GS or not is a separate matter. But I thought it was a very interesting way of looking at things. So I thought I'll leave this thought with you.
Right, Karthik.
I think Shashiji just hit the nail on the head. The problem is not that is it oxymoron that news should be dependent on advertising. I think the biggest tech companies in the world are based on advertising today. So, it's not a question of whether it should be based on advertising or not. The question is, should it be based on numbers? That's the premise. I think the biggest premise over here is not questioning advertising. The questioning of numbers is the biggest problem. And I think that's where bulk of the industry representatives who are sitting on this panel, they need to shed some light that if news is what it is supposed to be, and it has to have that moral standing and all those factors that we talk about, why is it that the advertisers are only looking at numbers on news? Whereas that's not the only thing it's communicating. I mean, a channel can have 5% share, but who's to say which 5% of people are watching that channel? And what kind of TG is it bringing to the advertisers? So the slicing of the data and the kind of relativity that the advertiser needs also needs to be deep dived into, because it's a small part of the portion. Perhaps a lot of these companies are not doing that. I think that's my grouse.
That's a brilliant take, Karthik. So if you could quickly react to what he's saying, while as we just established that GECs and news are completely different, news also, I think the impact of news could have been a far greater parameter to decide the efficacy of a news channel. So Karthik is saying that why so much of emphasis only on numbers? Why do you buy both GEC and news under the same parameter?
Okay, now I think we're getting into the deep end of things. Things will get a little bit more hairy and interesting. Great. I think you raised a brilliant point. Look, as media planning has become more of a science, there is a reliance on numbers, reach, frequency, all that jazz. And people will look at numbers, and especially since they're professional managers who also have to sort of cover their backside, so to speak, they will be using numbers to actually come out with plans to justify, basically science to justify their plans. So that said, if I have to look, we're talking genres. If we have to look at GEC, sports, and all the other genres and then come to news, there are 2 ways in which we media agencies buy or do our deals. One is linked to ratings, and one is just a rate for 10 seconds that you guys are selling. I would say that actually the reality is that news, at least 50 to 60% of it, if not more, is being sold on a rate. It is not only rating. Rating is looked at, but as we stand right now, people are looking at both. Second thing is that when you come to owner-driven organizations, you'll find the owner-driven organization who doesn't have to worry about covering his backside. They'll take punts and calls very well by say, qualitatively, I believe this channel is better or with whatever, and they have a judgment. It's not a gut call only, it's a judgment. And they are willing to sort of go beyond numbers to actually take a call. So I wouldn't say it's a complete, we aren't living in a completely sort of anally number-driven land. I think it's somewhere in the middle. It is much better than it is for a whole number of genres. You need to be thankful for that. Can it become better? I think the conversations can become better. But that's where it is. I think the state of the nation right now is, it's not a completely hopeless that people are not only relying on numbers. I think another follow-up question, I think, after we go around is let's get into the numbers themselves. I'd love to get into the numbers because I think with the vagaries, with the with what we have from rating system, and BARC chairman is sitting here. I lead the TechCom of BARC, so we have some idea about how the BARC ratings and even for news actually happen. I think we are trying to take too much out of those numbers, too much, and I think that's a follow-up question. But right now, to answer your question, Karthikeya, or your observation, it's not so hopeless. I think people are taking calls. It's about 50-50.
Prashant, you would like to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean,
Karthik's
I agree with every point. So let's face this, I mean, every brand does not have a potential 500 million customers to reach. And that's a fact. There are large FMCG companies where, I mean, they have a larger base to attend to, in retaining customers as well as recruiting new. But there are many categories within that same category or multiple categories where they are probably looking for 1 lakh potential customers, and as low as that. We as a genre has a much larger play on the upper funnel. We definitely have very engaging reach, not just reach on those. So there are clear opportunities, right? Even if you want to read the numbers in a certain form. The question is, how are we narrating that story, right? How are we exchanging those conversations? Every table is a negotiation table, and if it just only restrict to a currency of rate per 10 seconds, then we both are responsible, which is a buyer or a seller. So let us understand that. And today I would like to add one more point, which I think is experienced with everybody. After 2.5 years of COVID, we are in a situation, this industry, with almost 35% of the people are probably new. Now it's a challenge, but I feel it's an opportunity. We got to educate them, right? I mean, we spend in our own organization, spending enough more time. Of course, today also there are challenges, people coming to office. But at the same time, our single most focus is to continue train our people, right? So that's an opportunity for us to relate that. I mean, there are new people, there are people in new roles. In the client side, there are new people, right? So if you're able to narrate the solution in appropriate form, I think we can definitely make it much more faster, right? I mean, the result is all what we know, but if you want to look at the pace, I think that we can make a big change if you're able to attend to that as well. That's it.
If I just paraphrase what Vikram and Prashant said, that essentially there are, I mean, the third one you haven't touched upon. There are 3 parameters or 3 aspects based on which you take your decision. One, of course, number. The second is qualitative, the perception, which is more in case of an English news genre, less in case of a Hindi or regional. And the third is how good is the salesman, as you said, that how good he puts it across the table and makes his point beyond numbers. And we've seen our lives that, yes, sometimes not only numbers, you look at other parameters also. Shashi, since you also are a chairman of BARC, I think one of the very critical aspects of news genre is the impact. The other genre can be sold on these 3 aspects, but impact. Is there any way you see in foreseeable future, because news is all about impact, can we incorporate that part, maybe a little bit subjectively or maybe with any kind of reference number?
To tell you honestly, I haven't thought about it, but it's an interesting point. So don't want to bat without thinking, but it's an interesting point you make. Let me, yeah.
Right, okay, thanks. So from this advertising thing, let's move to the other aspect of our business, which we are completely deprived of, which is subscription revenue. Again, you guys are brand champions. You created brands, you created organizations, you helped organizations overcome challenges and came out victorious. How do we get this these Indian consumers to pay for consumption of news. You see, our newspapers are highly subsidized. I think not even 20% or 10% of variable manufacturing cost a newspaper owner would have recovered. And most of the television news channels are free to air. I think while the industry operates at about, in India, correct me if I'm wrong, is about close to 55 to 60% of subscription revenue, whereas the news genre operates at some 6 to 8% subscription revenue. That too also, most of them would be bundled. On its own might not have been sold. We tried our bit, in fact, you know about that. OTT, News 9 Plus, we've launched, and we aspire to make it completely subscription driven and ad free. How do you have, as brand champions, something to guide us on that? How do we go about? It may not be overnight, but how do we go about getting these Indian consumers to pay for consumption of news? Starting with you, Vikram.
Differentiated and compelling content. That's two things. So according to me, like live sport, cricket, it is unique, it is highly differentiated. If one platform has it and you can't see it somewhere else, that's the only place that people will come and they'll pay because it's compelling content. GEC, they have the top shows. Currently, there's a show called Anupama. It's doing amazingly well. At that point in time, and you can only see it on Star Plus, so people will pay to get there. The thing with news and your challenge with news is, currently, I'm a reasonably avid news surfer, so I might see between 9 and 10 3 channels, and I find there is a largely the same kind of news delivered maybe a little differently across those. So somewhere along the line, and if you say there are 600 channels, think about the consumer. If they're not getting highly differentiated content, and if it is not that compelling, then why should they pay?
Right. Prashant, I think here, as we discussed some time back, there's a problem that we got to live on things that had happened. We can't create incidences. Therefore, the challenge of differentiation always remains for us, unlike, as I said, GC or sports. Anything that you would like to add to what Vikram has said?
Yeah, I think, see, there is news, and then there is the business of news, right? And this topic falls in the latter part. Now, I know there are limitations, there are regulations, there are tri-bodies, etc., from a subscription perspective and all. But I think if we are able to think slightly more sharper, which is what are some of the strong assets that we have, like the prime time viewing is a strong asset. Now, we should also understand that these are all habits that we've infused into the system. And some of it are legacy issues. Now, we want to create a change in the habit, right? Now, how do we create change in the habit? We may have to start with probably prime time subscription. I don't know, I'm just putting a thought, right? And I'm sure everybody has their own preferences of viewing prime time and news, right? But that's left to the choice of the consumer, which could be influenced by the channels. But that's how we start thinking on, right? Today is a world where many of our, different categories are giving opportunities to look at the models different, right? Commerce is a model that is coming in, right? Every one of us has got multiple reach. Is there a thought on how we look at, differentiated categories and look at how we can package some of them? I don't know. Again, it's a thought for us to think. It's also a time where we have multiple digital, assets that we ourselves have created. Now, is there a combo model there? It's again an opportunity to think in. So to me, if we all sit collectively together, we may have 100 such ideas, right? So if we can indulge in that, select some of them, create solutions to induce change in habits of consuming, right? And then create differentiation, which is a daily game for us. I'm sure we'll have solutions to that. Now, whether you want to hit the ball out of the park on day one, or whether you want to, do it in a substantial, in a progressive manner, I think that is left to, again, the business of news, which each one of you are focusing. That's my...
Right. Shashi, you want to add to that?
I don't agree with the fundamental premise that, it's difficult to create differentiation in news. people sitting here, anchor celebrities themselves.
It's difficult. I did not say impossible.
Yeah, and I give you a small example.
And put it in perspective, more difficult than GEC.
Maybe. That always, my company is more difficult to run than Prashant's. He'll say, no, I'm bigger. Like we're having this conversation at breakfast. He says, I'm bigger, therefore it's more difficult to maintain. So I empathize. Look at Beyond. I mean, not be appropriate to give an example here. No ratings, nothing. Today our clients say, listen, let's get on to it. Whatever they did, there was a content, anchor, everything put together. So I think it's principles of marketing. If you apply all those principles for anything in life, we do it all the time for our clients, we'll apply here also. So,
I talked about converting that into subscription revenue.
Subscription
revenue. I don't think
subscription revenue, I think before you go to the consumer, you have to first convince the government with your power if you can't convince them. So if you get them to make it easy for you to get subscription, then half the battle will be won, sir. Am I right in what I'm saying? So,
So I'm sure that's written in the textbook as well. Karthik, we need to wind up. So before we come to the individual comment about future of news, anything that you would like to add to this discussion?
I think the problem here is not industry specific. It's a global problem. When we look at subscription in news, I think we're getting confused between linearity of content and subscription on the digital and other premises. I speak of it on purpose because globally, if you look at it, subscription in the new manifestation is still a challenge. Whether it's The Economist or the Wall Street Journal globally, even they're finding it difficult to get subscription. See, I think we are approaching it in an incorrect manner. The way we have to look at consumption going forward is that only way subscription will be possible is if consumers think the content is worthy of paying for it. And that will only happen if there's commonality when you're consuming content. So, in other words, let me put it in an example. I think the future of news for subscription lies in communities. A common platform where people come together to use content, consume it, and will be able to actually use it to their advantage. They'll pay for it. Unless it's generic in nature, they will not pay for it. And that's a problem we have to deal with. That's a problem because it's the same for us as it is for the rest of the world. I think the biggest challenge that lies there, and if I can come back to our earlier panel, because I wanted to make a point on that, is that which numbers do we go by? I mean, numbers when we speak of, we have two sets of numbers. We have numbers that we come through the television rating mechanism, and then we have another set of numbers that comes through digital media. And not to say that those numbers are not right, or those algorithms are not right. Frankly, they are far more in depth and far more in detail. So when we put out a video on a channel and we say that according to the television metric, it has reached so many million people. At the same time, when you put out the same content on digital media and we say it has reached to far more people than what the metric says, I think that is a challenge. So which numbers to follow? That is also a constant process. So I definitely ask,
I'll just briefly answer to that. Try and
I want Shashi to answer that.
One sec. I'll just give it to Shashi, but I just want to add something what you said, and the question becomes complete then. I think if you talk about which number, while we measure broadcast audience number, that is broadcast. When you measure digital, that is digital. And I still feel the digital audience in India is still evolving. It's trailing a little bit behind broadcast. Having said that, I can tell you that couple of markets in India, like let's say Bangalore, Karnataka, let's say Maharashtra, there is a correlation between, let's say, a YouTube concurrent viewership and television rating, which is there in Hindi too. But some markets it's not there. But then why we can't strictly look at that from the YouTube concurrent viewership is that you can influence that by boosting.
But YouTube might not be the only parameter, no? There are multiple parameters.
That's right.
So Hindi heartland might have more impressions on Facebook, while the urban cities might have it on Twitter and Instagram.
So Shashi, are we heading towards that?
I'm mindful that PK has a flight to catch, and this concert could take very long. So I thought, are we doing a session on
on the measurement rating system?
Because I'm mindful my friend shouldn't miss his flight.
Right.
So,
okay. Finally, I think we'll ask for each one of you to comment briefly on how do you see the future of television news. And I have a proposition. I think the panacea for television news is, which is again very controversial, very radical, The total revenue of news industry is about 5,000 crore. So if I could give away 5,000 crore to all the news organizations, say that this is the revenue that you earned last year, here is revenue for 1 year, and I'm giving you 1 year time to turn yourself completely pay and no advertising, and it will make do with your subscription revenue. And the consumers will decide whether they'll pay $100, $10 or $1 for it. Will that work? Or if there's any other feature of news direction that you have?
So, my friend, can I go first? That's a very nice discussion for a conference room hall like that. Yeah, we are not going to go that path. So, may I make a suggestion? Be more practical. The practical thing is what I said. If you guys collaborate together, you know, collectively the body, and I'm so thrilled to see this body together, so many of you, and you find in a ways, have faith. Maybe offline, Peking can tell you, Vikram can tell you, we are getting huge traction for ourselves when we collaborate. You know, as we say, we fight by day, we are competitors by day, we are collaborators by night. Literally. The drink binds us together. So, you know, there is a lot. That's my message, which is more practical than what you are saying.
So you're saying future of news is to consolidate and don't fight. Collaborate. Right. Shan?
Yeah, I think very simply put, loads of opportunities. These are days where we are all very also looking at different challenges, etc., you know, from the economy aspect. At the same time, this is a time where we can definitely collectively work and create fantastic solutions, right? So I see a bigger role of news channels in creating solutions for every task every advertiser is facing, irrespective of whichever market, whichever language. In fact, they are all strong points for us to deal with. My urge is to really, you know, take some of the points which we spoke, right, which is leveraging all our assets, look at technology solutions, look at thinking more as solutions for advertisers, get it more collectively, talk more, change the narrative, talk more to the entire industry, some of the new ones, some of the people who are in the new roles, etc. I think they are all going to be a strong help to, you know, get our pace much more stronger, right? Definitely, this is only going to get more bigger and bolder. You have a lot more assets which you are creating, each one of you in different phases while dealing with the same subject, right? And but the solutions and approach can be similar and be more collaborative. And as an ecosystem, all of us will work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Vikram.
Look, news was, is, and will continue to be highly relevant to everybody. Everybody in India, everybody in the world. Since the question is future of news, I think the aspect I'd like to bring in is what will happen in a digital age. Currently, the way we talk about it is, we talk about TV, newspapers, digital, radio, so on and so forth, and we look at digital as a medium. Digital is not a medium. I think increasingly in the future, you will start looking at mediums a little sensorially as audiovisual, text, image, voice, experiential, like that. The audiovisual parts, even today, when I'm watching TV, and in fact this morning, for some reason my set-top box was not working, so I caught my morning news online. And it was good streaming, same TV channel, but I was watching it online. Connected TVs coming in, so on and so forth. So it's going to become, from a consumer standpoint, highly seamless, whether you're watching it linear or basically online. Worldwide, if you have to look across almost all of these mediums, the way we define them sensorially, about 30% of the viewership is coming from digital, and that will grow. The way I'm looking at future of news and the opportunity I'm seeing is, somewhere I think breaking news will break now online because it's here and now. And I think analysis, perspective, insight, and dare I say, inquisitions will happen on TV. And I think that is going to be the part where you really need to build. And I think that's where all news newscasters, they need to look at their digital practice a little differently from their linear TV practice. And I think in these two things, breaking news versus analysis insight.
Thanks, Vikram. Karthik, your words, and if you wish to sum up this discussion.
Well, I think I'd like to sum up by saying that news is here to stay, and the immediacy and the urgency of news cannot be replaced, whatever the medium be, whether it is through your set-top box or through your OTT platforms. Unlike GEC and other mediums, where the human brain has the ability to consume content when and where they want to consume, news will always have that immediacy and urgency, which is by its true nature not replaceable. Which is also true for sports. I mean, when the sport is happening, you need to watch it there and then. And the same logic applies for news. But having said that, I think the future of news lies in multiple manifestations. And I think people themselves will drive what they want to watch. The role of our editors and people who select news is going to go down, and we are going to become more driven on what people want to watch. That's the future of news.
Thank you very much. I think we had a great session. Thank you for coming down all the way from Bombay, Shashi. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'll just urge you to stay on stage for 60 more seconds. I want to quickly get in founding president of NBF, Mr. Arnab Goswami, for a quick reaction as well to this inaugural panel.
I was listening keenly. I know your flight to catch PK, but PK, Shashi and Vikram, 30-second thought from me. There have been unnecessarily jarring conversations between industry and news. This conversation can be a new start. I saw you say that news is a reach builder. So that shows your commitment from an industry point of view. But we all, one NBF, want to tell you, we all have an equal commitment to democracy. This conversation can be a game changer in the relationship between the media industry and the news side of our business. So we thank you, and we want to work collaboratively with you. In 1 month, we will come back from NBF with a white paper to you on how we can position our content in a way that is more applicable from a business point of view. I hope you give us an appointment when we seek it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So certainly the tone and tenor being set not just for the day today, but also the weeks and months ahead for the landscape of news in the country. Thank you once again, Mr. Prashant Kumar, Mr. Vikram Sakhuja, Mr. Shashi Sinha, Mr. Kartikeya Sharma and Barun Das for that absorbing, riveting discussion, as I said, on the theme, the central premise of today's conclave, Future of News. And now we're quickly going to be moving across to our next session, Future of News, Bark and Beyond. To give you more details on that session, I'll quickly invite on stage my colleagues Krishna and Suyesha. Could we please have you on stage to introduce the next panelists and give us more details about the next session.
Thank you there. Yes, that was a cracker of a first session, wasn't it, Suyesha? It's time now to move on quickly to the next session. Up next is indeed a very interesting, quick and interactive session. It's with the Chairman and CEO of BARC, Mr. Shashi Sinha, who has just left the stage, requesting Mr. Shashi Sinha to take the stage again, please. And also Mr. Barun Das, MD and CEO of TV9 Network, requesting him to take the stage as well for this session, BARC and Beyond.